In the land of Ijun, nestled between the lush green hills and sparkling rivers of Yorubaland, the sun always seemed to shine with a deep, golden hue. The kingdom, known for its wisdom, beauty, and resilience, had been ruled by the great King Adebayo for decades. He was a man of peace and prosperity, beloved by his people and cherished by his family. But the king, though still strong and full of life, had grown weary. His time was coming to an end, and the kingdom stood on the precipice of a new era. The throne of Ijun, like many thrones in the Yoruba kingdoms, was not just a symbol of power, it was a legacy. For generations, the people of Ijun had lived in harmony, and the king was seen not only as a ruler but as the protector of their very essence. But with the passing of King Adebayo, the time had come for his sons, Ayotunde and Olamide, to vie for the throne. Ayotunde, the elder of the two, was born to the king's first wife, Queen Aderonke, a woman of great beauty and intellect. From a young age, Ayotunde exhibited traits that marked him as a future king: wisdom beyond his years, a deep understanding of the people's needs, and an unwavering sense of justice. He had been groomed for the throne all his life, learning the ways of the court, the art of diplomacy, and the responsibility of leadership. Olamide, on the other hand, was born to the king's second wife, Queen Moronkaji. While Ayotunde had the traditional rights to the throne, Olamide's birth had been a stroke of fortune for the king. Olamide was a firebrand, a passionate, fierce young man who believed that the throne should be earned by strength and action, not just by age. He was a warrior at heart, respected by the soldiers and admired by the commoners for his boldness and charisma. His rise had been swift, and his ambition was undeniable. As King Adebayo's health began to fail, the two brothers found themselves at an impasse. The kingdom, once peaceful, began to stir with tension. The people were torn between Ayotunde's measured wisdom and Olamide's fiery determination. Both brothers believed they were the rightful heir. Ayotunde, the elder son, believed that the throne should follow the rules of tradition. He was the firstborn, and in the Yoruba culture, the firstborn always had the birthright to rule. Olamide, however, saw this as a weakness, arguing that leadership was not simply about birthright, but about who could lead the kingdom into the future. The court became a battleground. Ayotunde surrounded himself with the elders and the council, seeking their support. The kingdom, once peaceful, began to stir with tension. The people were torn between Ayotunde's measured wisdom and Olamide's fiery determination. Both brothers believed they were the rightful heir. Ayotunde, the elder son, believed that the throne should follow the rules of tradition. He was the firstborn, and in the Yoruba culture, the firstborn always had the birthright to rule. Olamide, however, saw this as a weakness, arguing that leadership was not simply about birthright, but about who could lead the kingdom into the future. The court became a battleground. Ayotunde surrounded himself with the elders and the council, seeking their support, while Olamide rallied the young warriors and the common folk who admired his tenacity. Each side began to build their own network of loyalists, and the once united kingdom now seemed to be on the brink of civil war. The days grew tense. The elders of Ijun, those who had watched over the kingdom for years, called for a council meeting. It was time to settle the matter, to decide who would take the throne. Both brothers were summoned, their presence demanded in the grand hall of the palace. Ayotunde entered first, walking with the calm assurance of someone who knew his place. He greeted the elders respectfully, acknowledging their wisdom, and sat at the head of the council table. His gaze was steady, his voice clear as he spoke of the values of tradition, peace, and stability that had guided the kingdom for centuries. Olamide entered shortly after, his steps quick and confident. He was a man of action, and his mere presence in the room was like a storm, stirring the air with intensity. He addressed the elders with fire in his eyes, speaking of the need for change, for a king who could lead with strength, who would not simply inherit power, but seize it with the might of his own will. The room fell into silence. The tension between the two brothers was palpable. It was a conflict of ideologies. Ayotunde represented the old ways, while Olamide symbolized the new generation, eager for revolution. The elder council members, wise as they were, found themselves divided. There was no easy answer. Days turned into weeks, and the conflict only deepened. The people of Ijun began to take sides. The market streets, once filled with joy and laughter, were now filled with whispers and debates. The kingdom, once united, was on the brink of fracturing. It was then that an old man, Elle, the village elder and the wisest man in Ijun, stepped forward. He had lived through countless storms in the kingdom, and his age had granted him a deep understanding of the people and their ways. He was known to be a man of few words, but when he spoke, even the strongest warriors listened. Elle called for a final meeting, one that would decide the fate of the kingdom. Both brothers arrived at the meeting, their faces hardened by weeks of conflict. Ayotunda, the elder and more composed, stood with a quiet dignity, while Olamide stood like a storm, his chest puffed out with pride. The air was thick with the weight of the moment. The old man, with his frail hands and sunken eyes, looked at both brothers with deep sadness. He spoke slowly, his voice carrying the wisdom of generations. "My sons," he began, "I have seen many kings rise and fall. I have seen empires built and destroyed. But what I see now is something I have never witnessed before. Two brothers bound by blood, at war for the very thing that should unite you. The throne is not a prize to be won. It is a duty to be fulfilled. Leadership is not about birthright, nor is it about strength alone. It is about understanding the heart of the people, the soul of the land." He paused, his eyes scanning the room as if looking for something deeper, something beyond the pride and anger that had consumed the brothers. "The question you must ask yourselves, my sons, is not who will be king," Elle continued. "The real question is, who will serve the people? Who will listen to their hearts and lead with wisdom, courage, and compassion? You may have the right to rule, but do you have the heart to lead?" The room fell silent. Ayotunde's face softened, and Olamide's fiery expression flickered for a moment. The old man's words had struck a chord deep within them. The tension in the room was palpable, but no one spoke. The brothers stood there facing not just each other, but the legacy of their father and the future of their kingdom. The silence in the grand hall of the palace felt like a heavy cloak draped over everyone present. Eledumar's words echoed through the room, causing both brothers to pause and reflect. The usual fire in Olamide's eyes softened, if only for a moment, and Ayotunde's calm demeanor seemed to falter, as if the weight of his father's legacy was finally bearing down on him. The room, once charged with the energy of conflict, now hummed with tension, as everyone awaited the next move. Olamide was the first to break the silence. His voice was quieter now, more thoughtful, though his words still carried the power of a man who believed deeply in his own path. "I respect your wisdom, Elle," he began, his eyes never leaving his brother's. "But this kingdom needs more than just wisdom. It needs strength. Strength to face the challenges ahead. Ayotunde's wisdom is undeniable, but it lacks the fire of leadership. If we do not take action, we will be left behind." Ayotunde's eyes narrowed, but his tone remained steady, calm as the waters of a peaceful lake. "And yet, Olamide, your strength is like a fire that burns too brightly, too hot. It consumes everything in its path. What good is strength if it destroys the very things you seek to protect? The kingdom does not need a ruler who rules with force, but one who understands the hearts of the people, who listens to their voices and acts for their good. I will not lead with a heart of iron." The words hung in the air, heavy and charged with the tension of years spent in rivalry. The elder council members watched, their faces creased with concern, knowing that this moment would shape the future of Ijun. It wasn't just a matter of who would wear the crown. It was a matter of what kind of kingdom they would leave behind. Elle, who had been quietly observing the exchange, finally stood up. His frailty seemed to dissolve as he walked with a strength that belied his years. The room fell silent once more, all eyes turning to him. He had been the wisest of them all, the voice of reason in times of strife, and his next words would carry the weight of the decision. "Listen to me, both of you," he said, his voice filled with a surprising authority. "The kingdom is not a possession to be fought over. It is a trust, a responsibility that you must carry with the utmost care. The people of Ijun are not pawns in your game, nor are they subjects to be ruled with an iron fist. They are your family, your brothers and sisters, and they deserve a leader who can see beyond personal desires. Leadership is not about proving who is stronger or smarter. It is about serving the people with everything you have. He turned to Ayotunde, his eyes piercing through the prince. You, Ayotunde, have the wisdom, the patience, and the grace that many kings would envy. But wisdom without action is like a tree that bears no fruit. You must act, not just as a ruler, but as a servant of the people. Your heart is good, but you must learn to wield your heart as well as your mind. Then he turned to Olamide. And you, Olamide, your strength is undeniable, but it must be tempered with humility. Strength that is wielded without care can destroy more than it builds. You must learn that the mightiest warrior is not the one who strikes hardest, but the one who knows when to hold back, when to offer peace instead of war. Both brothers stood there, stunned by the depth of Eledumare's words. For the first time, they both felt the weight of what it truly meant to be king. It was not just about what they could take, it was about what they could give. It was not about winning. It was about guiding the people with love and honor. Eledumare continued. You both have the qualities needed to rule, but you must learn to blend them together. Ayotunde, you must learn to act with urgency when the kingdom calls for it. Olamide, you must learn to lead with compassion when the people need it most. I will not tell you who should be king, for that is a decision that must come from your hearts. But I will tell you this. The kingdom will only thrive when you both put aside your pride and learn to lead together. The brothers stood there, their hearts heavy with the responsibility that lay ahead. They had spent their lives competing, each believing they were the rightful ruler, each convinced that they alone could lead the kingdom to greatness. But now, they saw the truth in Eledumare's words. The throne was not a prize. It was a burden, one that required both wisdom and strength, patience and action, compassion and resolve. For the first time, Ayotunde and Olamide truly looked at each other, not as rivals, but as brothers. The rivalry that had torn their family apart for so long began to melt away, replaced by a shared understanding. It was not about who would be king. It was about how they would rule together. Eledumare, seeing the change in their eyes, smiled faintly. You have learned the most important lesson of all. The throne is not a solitary thing. It is a partnership, a union of strengths. Together, you will make Ijun greater than it has ever been. And with that, the room seemed to exhale, the tension that had gripped it for so long beginning to dissipate. The brothers, once at odds, stood side by side, not as rivals, but as leaders, united in their resolve to protect their people and lead their kingdom into a new era. The council members, who had watched the entire exchange in silence, nodded approvingly. They knew that the decision had been made, not by force nor by birthright, but by wisdom, strength, and the shared understanding of what it truly meant to lead. As the sun set over the kingdom of Ijun, casting long shadows over the palace, the two brothers stood together, looking out over their people. It was not the end of their journey, but the beginning. The road ahead would be long, and the challenges many, but for the first time in their lives, they knew they would face it together. And in that moment, Ijun was no longer divided. The kingdom had found its king, not in one, but in both. The end